Hey guys, my name is JKPreflor, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about something that happened in my past. I told you in a video before that I had some things happen to me when I was younger, dealing with the paranormal. And I figured today was a good day to bring up one of those stories. But before we begin, I wanted to let you guys know that I noticed that 75% of you have yet to subscribe that have been watching my videos. If that is you and you've been enjoying this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below as that helps me out. Also, hit the bell notification so you know when I drop my next video. Thanks! So, this took place back when I was about 16 years old. My dad had moved away to Missouri with my stepmom and her 3 younger children. Eventually, I was told that I needed to go live with him. I wasn't super thrilled about this, because I had lived in my hometown all of my life, and I was getting close to finishing high school. I was technically living on my own at that point, but not in a legal sense, so when my dad said I needed to come live with him, there wasn't much I could really do. And honestly, there was a part of me that was relieved, because living on your own at that age is insanely difficult, especially when you're in high school. So I packed my things and we left. When we got to my new house, I noticed 2 things right off the bat. One was that the house had kind of an odd layout. The master bedroom was attached to the living room, and the basement had tons of windows that you could see right into it from 2 different directions of the house. The other thing I noticed was an uneasy feeling I got about the place. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something just didn't feel right. Well, the very first night I was there, I had a vivid nightmare about a little girl dressed in a white nightgown. Honestly, couldn't even tell you what was so scary about the nightmare other than a girl who was just standing there, staring at me. She gave off this horrifying vibe, and I couldn't make out her face or anything else. She was just all black. The dream felt like it went on for hours, with her just staring at me. I was totally helpless. When I awoke from the dream, I was out of my mind scared. I came and told my dad, but he just sent me back to bed. I ended up catching the flu just a couple days later, so I thought maybe all these nightmares and the uneasy feeling was part of the flu? That, or being in a strange new town miles away from anyone else that I knew. Man, did I wish that was the case. During my time being sick, I was restricted mainly to my room and the bathroom for obvious reasons. Between my room and the bathroom, there was an attic hatch. I noticed it was slightly cracked open, but I didn't think anything of it. During one of my visits to the bathroom, I heard 3 loud scratching noises in the wall behind the mirror. It sounded like someone was either messing with me, or something was alive in the walls. When I told my dad about it, he said that he had heard it before too, and that it was probably a squirrel or something in the walls. Honestly, I didn't really buy it, but what could I do at the time? As nights went on, I continued to have nightmares every night about that little girl, even after the flu was gone. So it wasn't the flu that was causing it. When I would wake up and go to the restroom, I noticed that the attic hatch seemed like it was opened a little bit more than the day before. It wasn't much, so I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I told my dad about it after about the 3rd time noticing it, just in case. He told me I was probably imagining it, and that's what I thought too, but he never bothered to close the hatch all the way. A few weeks went by and I was trying to get used to living in the new house, and in this new town. I was hoping to shake that odd vibe that this place was giving me, and all the nightmares, but it never seemed to work. I remember one night I was having a really hard time falling asleep, which is odd for me. I'm the kind of guy that hits his head on the pillow and is completely out. But that night, I just kept getting this uneasy feeling for some reason, and my mind was racing. So I turned my music up kinda loud to drown out my own thoughts, and finally I fell asleep. That night, I had another nightmare about that little girl. She was dressed in an all-white nightgown, like the girl from The Ring, but I couldn't make out her face, just like the last time. I remember she was trying to get me to be quiet, but she wasn't saying anything. It was weird. I just felt she wanted me to be quiet. Then I woke up, and to my horror, she was in the room looking at me while turning down my music. I shot up and I pushed myself up against the wall while trying to force out a scream, but the only thing that came out was a grunt. I rubbed my eyes hard, and then when I opened them again, she was gone. My music had been turned down for sure, though. I remember turning it up quite loud. I ran out of the room and I looked around for who might have done it. But everyone was in bed asleep. It was then that I realized that the little girl who lived in the house wasn't even big enough to mess with my speakers. And my stepmom was taller than that girl. I asked anyway, but she definitely didn't do it, she said. My dad didn't either. I was so scared, but he just told me to go to sleep, and if I couldn't, to try to sleep on the couch. I didn't really get much sleep that night. The following morning, I hesitantly went back to my room. It was all as I had left it, including the music playing at that low volume. I went into my closet to get my clothes when I noticed something that horrified me. There was a small entrance to the attic in my closet that I had no clue about, and the hatch was on the floor. The attic was completely open. Something or someone came down from that attic the night before. My dad couldn't really get up there to check though because he's disabled, but it shook him up too. He told me that I just needed to sleep in the living room for the next few days to make myself feel better, so I did. He couldn't explain to me though why that hatch was on the ground, and I could tell it worried him. The following night, the dream was there again, but she was even closer this time. The nights went on and the nightmares continued, and she kept getting closer and closer, until I noticed in one dream that I was in the bathroom, and she was in the mirror. The same mirror I heard the scratching noise behind. I woke up scared out of my mind. I wish I could say the nightmares ended there, but they didn't. The nightmares became more and more clear as she was getting closer and closer to the mirror. I tried to tell my dad about them and that I was scared that if she got to the mirror that she would come and get me. He just blew me off though and told me everything was going to be okay, but I could sleep in the living room if I wanted to. I took him up on that offer, and I'm glad I did, because that night in my dream, she reached the mirror and started to climb through it. I woke up in a cold sweat when I heard someone in the bathroom. I panicked, I jumped up, and I got my dad and my stepmom. I checked the kids' room, and they were all in there asleep. No one in the house was in the bathroom. My dad heard the noise too, but when he got to the bathroom, no one was there. He said we must have all heard something because we were just too tired and didn't understand what it was, but I know what it was. This time I convinced him to stay in the living room with me and sleep in the chair while I slept on the couch. After that, the nightmares ended. I started to feel normal, and I was thinking of sleeping in my room again. It was great. I fell asleep on the couch one more night because I just didn't want to chance it. And then I had another nightmare, but not about the girl this time. This time it was about a guy in a top hat, and he was all in black, just like the little girl was. And just like the other nightmare, he kept getting closer and closer to me. Every night I would have the same nightmare, but he was closer and closer until I realized in one of them that I was at the top of the stairs and he was at the bottom. In another nightmare, I saw the little girl again, and she seemed scared. She kept saying, "He's coming, he's coming." I saw him again in the next nightmare I had the next night. He was at the bottom step, but he was looking up at me. Even though I couldn't make out his face, I could tell he was looking up at me. I told my dad about this one too, and I think it shook him because he put a security bar on the basement door to make sure nothing could come through while we were sleeping. Meanwhile, every night, the man was on the next stair, then the next stair, and he would be staring at me each night, progressing one step at a time, and it felt like I was in the nightmares for hours on end. I would wake up in a panic. One night, I reached the last nightmare, where he was at the top of the stairs. I woke up in a panic, knowing that there would be someone. Sure enough, I heard someone on the stairs. My dad heard it too because he woke up. He just grabbed a hold of me when he came out and told me everything was going to be okay. He took me into his room and we began to say a prayer. We started hearing turning on the doorknob for the basement, but the door never opened. We said a prayer again and nothing else happened. Whatever was on the stairs had stopped entirely. I fell asleep in their room, but honestly, it wasn't even night. It was early morning at this point, and I'm pretty sure my dad didn't sleep at all that night. I stopped having nightmares after that, but I convinced my dad that something did not want me there. I needed to go back home, to the town I moved from. I had only been there for a few months, but something told me that if I didn't go home, something horrible was going to happen. Reluctantly, my dad agreed. Against the wishes of my stepmom, he took me back home to my hometown to live. I was going to live on my own again, but it was better than whatever was going on there. My dad and I didn't talk the entire way home about that event. We just tried to ignore it, but I could tell my dad was shook. I never had nightmares of either of them again, but I can't say the same for my dad, stepmom, and her kids. Just so you're aware, I never told the kids what was going on, as they were just really young and I didn't want to scare them. My dad called me the week after I had moved out. He told me that the kids needed to tell me something that I needed to hear. I thought they were going to tell me that they wanted me to come back or something. What they said, though, was truly horrifying. They told me that they saw a shadow under my door and heard a little girl giggling in there the day after I left. I couldn't even speak. My dad took the phone and he said, "Son, the reason I took you back home, the reason I was scared, the week you started seeing that man with the top hat, Judy, our landlady, do you remember her? She complimented me on that top hat. Said, 'What are you talking about? I don't have a top hat.' She said, 'That's nonsense. I saw you in the basement at 6:30 the other morning when I was driving past wearing a top hat.' I was terrified. I did my best to never visit that place again. But, of course, I had to. It was my dad. When I did visit it, though, I refused to spend the night in that house. I always got a hotel room. My dad said things happened there from time to time, but it was nothing like when I was there. Whatever it was, it did not want me in that house." Guys, I want to thank you for joining me in this video. As you guys can probably tell, this one's a little harder for me to do because it's so personal. I still got chills on my arm, but I felt like you guys deserve to know. And if you guys want more content like this, please let me know. If you guys have any stories that you would like me to narrate, you can leave a comment down below, and I can give you my email address so that you can send those my way. If you guys enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and hit subscribe and the bell notification so you know when I drop my next video. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Kelly Warrens, my patron from Patreon, for helping to make this content possible. For those of you who are not yet patrons, I wanted to let you guys know that I do drop videos early there, along with votes and polling for my next videos, and special Discord invites. If you guys want to join me in Patreon, I am at JKPreflor on Patreon. I want to thank you guys, and I hope you have a great day. Peace.